What I want to talk about today is focus. When one hears the word focus, one generally thinks it's about having the clarity as to what needs to be done. But I have a different version to focus. Focus is also about knowing what not to do. In fact, recently in one of the coaching sessions, a client said, I know I should be doing this detailed side of my business, but I'm not doing it. And I looked at him and I was like, the problem is not that you're not doing what you should be doing. The problem is you're doing what you shouldn't be doing. A little bit of wordplay here. But let's have a look at the framework, which is exactly what I shared with him, which gave him an understanding as to where he was spending most of his time versus where he should be spending most of his time. So let's have a look, and I'm sure it will give you a very clear picture as to what kind of transition you need to make in your business space so you can actually achieve more with the right focus on the right things. So if you look at this, just maybe you should actually draw it on a piece of paper. So you're looking at a vertical axis which says what's the purpose or meaning, right? What the activities which are actually meaningful, which will help you achieve more in your business in terms of profitability or the asset value, or release more time for yourself, right? Meaning in your own ways. And then the horizontal axis is where you actually have fun doing those things. It's joyful, it gives you happiness, it's gratification. You enjoy, basically. That's what we're looking at. Now this is obviously low, high, and I'm looking at 4 quadrants. My clients know I love quadrants, okay, because they just make life easy doing decisions, to think it through. It's just a form of simplification. Now if I look at this particular quadrant, this is low fun and low meaning, right? Lots of trivia, lots of noise in day-to-day business life. And what I call this is surviving. Actually, this is the model which I took from Marshall Goldsmith, who's one of the leading executive coaches in the world, and I found this very useful when he shared it with us because it just makes sense. So have a look, okay? And when you see this, try to identify what percentage of your time, your business time, you actually spend in this quadrant, which is surviving, somehow just getting through the tasks, getting through the day or the time, okay? Now if I look at this quadrant, again, you can think of many activities which sit there, which are fun to do, exciting, but you know what? They're not really taking you to the goal where you want to be at. They're not really meaningful activities, and it's called stimulating, right? So what percentage of your time you're actually spending on activities which are stimulating, but they're not really meaningful? Now, when I'm working with clients as their coach, my objective is, and that's the permission I get from them to do, is to actually move them from these quadrants to these quadrants. Generally speaking, to start off with, they move in this quadrant and eventually the transition happens in this one. So now, if you look at, let's have a look at this quadrant first, which is, yes, you're not really having fun. It's like, you start going to the gym, your muscles hurt in the first few days or first few weeks. It's hurtful, but you still do it because there's a very clear meaning, a very clear purpose as to why you're doing it. And when you're in this quadrant, you're looking at this. It's sacrificing, right? It's painful. You're not enjoying it, but you know what? You know you should be doing it. And then as you build that habit, you build that muscle, you build that practice, you do that day in and day out without questioning it, because you're very clear, you're very focused that why that needs to be done, you eventually move into this quadrant, which is succeeding. And I totally understand, as a businesswoman myself, that 100% of the time cannot be spent here. But I'm very clear about one thing, that majority of the time needs to be spent in these top 2 quadrants, either in the sacrificing with absolute clarity as to why I'm in that quadrant and how it will eventually move me to this quadrant. But having the focus and knowing what not to do is very powerful. And as one of my mentors told me, that a made-up mind, a very clear mind, is the most powerful thing in the business and in life. So I really hope you can see for yourself as to where you are and where you need to be. And remember, made-up mind is a very, very powerful tool.